Good morning. Welcome to Business Insights, where every Monday at midday, a panel of industry thought leaders from business advisory and tax, risk management, property, superannuation and investments, employment and HR give their insights into the current economic and financial landscape that impacts small to medium businesses around Australia during this pandemic and beyond. My name is Lisa Garrido, and I'll be hosting this morning, introducing the panel of small business leaders in their area of expertise. I should also provide the following general warning that the views and opinions shared on this webinar are designed to be general information only and are not designed or to be taken as specific advice for your personal or specific circumstances. So please feel free to reach out to our panel members in their specific areas. We are also accessible on Facebook and LinkedIn. I'd like to introduce our panelists today. We have Adam Lyle from the Biz Doctors.
Hello, Lisa. Thank you for having me.
Hello. Ian McLaughlin from Imperium Accounting and Tax.
Good afternoon, viewers. Thanks for having me.
And Sammy Qureshi from Moneyclip.
Thanks for having me on board.
Great, thank you. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm Lisa Garrido from Enigma HR. Today, Adam, I'd like to start with you. So I'm pretty sure that businesses have a lot of questions about whether they should be concerned about the ATO at the moment. Can you shed some light on this for us, please?
Yeah, I think the honeymoon is over is probably the best way to sum it up. 2020, there was the moratorium in place, and you could almost basically from the 15th of March ring the toss and say, I know I've got a $250,000 debt, but can I have a year off, please? And they would say, absolutely. In fact, why don't we give you a bit longer? And the amount of debt reduced during 2020 was quite dramatic as well, insofar as that provided people were giving the ATO information, they would just go, oh, well, you want 100 grand off your debt? Off you go. No problems. There you go. It was quite dramatic, but guess what? It's a new year. 2021 is here. And I'm going to put some stuff up on the screen now, which is quite amazing to think about. The first thing is the ATO have never had this level of compliance and visibility in reporting. And why do you think that might be? Well, JobKeeper. Everyone wanted to put their hand out to get the money from the ATO, but there was a quid pro quo. If you didn't give them information, you didn't get JobKeeper. Pretty simple. So the ATO have got that information now, and they're using it to their advantage. And the ATO corporate plan, which was actually released in August 2020, is now really coming out to the fore. And I just want to highlight three particular areas of concern. 88% of all monies owed to the tax offices are paid on time. That's pretty huge. But that means 1.8 billion is not paid on time. The ATO have increased the level of costs to collect taxes to $106 million. That's how much they actually spend to collect money every year. That's in their corporate plan. 34% of all superannuation that's outstanding is unlikely to be collected this year. They've actually already provisioned for $65 million not to be collected in superannuation. Lisa, I'm sure you're actually probably a bit shocked about that in terms of people not looking after their employees. And guess what? Here's the kicker. The ATO debt owed to them has increased from 45 billion to 53 billion in 1 year. I mean, that's just, they should sell shares to this stuff. That's a great return on their investment. But the reality is that the ATO are getting a lot more information, but they're not great at collecting. And why? Because fundamentally, they couldn't collect it during the course of 2020. And that moratorium finished on 31 December. Now, our viewers are probably going, oh no, I've actually got a tax debt. What am I going to do? Well, guess what? 95% of all of our viewers, the SME sector, have a debt with the tax office. So you're not alone. So the first thing to do is don't panic, right? You are not alone. Number 2 will be communicate with the tax office. The more you communicate with them, the more cooperation you're going to get. You shut down and don't speak to them, they have huge powers just to deem a debt owed by you after 21 days. They can go, well, this is what we think you owe, and you're now responsible for that. And they can make directors personally liable for that deemed debt. So don't fall into the trap of not communicating. 3, have a real agreement with the tax office that is actually affordable. Don't promise to pay $5,000 a month if you can only afford 2.5. You're just digging yourself a bigger hole. Get a real budget in place. Make sure you know what you can afford, even on the rainy day. And make sure you communicate that with the tax office and show them your budget. Show them that that's what your sustainable repayment could be. And 4th, make sure, if you don't have Ian McLaughlin from Imperium Accounting and Tax as your accountant, you're mad. But if you've got another good one that's looking after you, get advice from your tax agent or your accountant to make sure that your compliance regime is solid, and if you can, get some debt reduction strategies going. I think that's basically it from me today. The ATO pressure is going to be real this year, folks. I'm sorry to say it, but they are Australia's biggest creditor, right? Often some people call them Australia's biggest bank, but they're going to be wanting to collect their money. They're owed a lot of money, $53 billion. They only collect $15 billion every year. That's their target every year. So they're actually 2.5 times what they get every year is what they're owed. So it's going to be an interesting year. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Those are staggering statistics. And as you said, it is the best time to be asking for really good advice from your accountants. And speaking of which, we go over now to Ian. So Ian, just give us an update on Cash Flow Boost in line with, I guess, what Adam's just talked about, and of course, the JobKeeper. Over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much, Lisa and Adam. That's some brilliant words there. So I just wanted to draw everybody's attention to the Cash Flow Boost stimulus measure from 2020. So you might recall that the cash flow boost was delivered as credits in the companies or the trusts or partnerships activity statement system. So the credit should have been the equivalent to the amount withheld from the wages to the employees for each month or quarter period from March 2020 to June 2020. So basically in practice, this means that you should have kept the amounts that you should have withheld for payments to your employees. Now, I've been hearing some reports recently that not all cash flow boost credits have been levied correctly. So the way it works is once the March business activity statement, the April installment activity statement, and the May installment activity statement, and the June and all the way down to September, once those lodgements were lodged with the ATO then levied the credits based on the figures that were reported in those activity statements. And the reports that I've been hearing is that not all businesses have had the correct credits levied. So what I urge everyone to do is simply Google cash flow boost calculator, and you simply just plug in the amounts that you withheld for those periods, and that will give you the amount of cash flow boost credits that you're entitled to. Then I urge people to compare this to what they received. Now, remember, it was either received as money back or it was reduced, or a reduction in the liability that you had to pay for those periods. So a lot of people have just assumed that the ATO was going to levy those correctly. In a lot of cases it has been, but in some cases it hasn't been. So I really do urge people to Google cash flow boost calculator and compare that. And you can simply you can ask your accountant to simply run a activity statement of account from the ATO portal. And then the credits that have levied on the credit side of that ledger should match up with the calculator. If they haven't, get in touch with the ATO and try and get it sorted out. So just something also on what Adam was talking about, cash flow. I just want to bring to people's attention that there is a really good tool on Xero, and I'm just going to share the screen now. Now, there is a module that's been introduced over the last couple of months, which is up here in the business section. And if you simply drop it to short-term cash flow, this gives you a good snapshot of what your predicted bank balance should be, okay, over the next 30 to 60 days. And you can change that time limit there. So I'm not sure if you guys can see that because it's gone blank on my end, but basically I'll give you a run through of the way it works. It picks up what invoices are outstanding, and then it's going to say, let's say for the sake of the argument, in 10 days time, you've got an invoice for $2,000 outstanding. Then it's going to pick that up and be like, well, on that date, your bank balance should have gone up by $2,000. And then it's also going to take out from that predicted bank balance any bills that you've got in there as well. So as Adam was talking about, if there is debt to the ATO, it is a really good idea to put these amounts into you can put the ATO as a creditor in Xero, and then that will get factored into your cash flow, communicate with the ATO, get into a payment plan, and then that way it can give you a really good quick snapshot of where your predicted cash balance is going to be. And then that's going to enable you to make the decisions that you need to make about growing your business. Lastly from me today, as Lisa mentioned at the top of the episode, we are at the 15th of February, which means that the January JobKeeper declarations did close off yesterday. However, you can still call the ATO today and verbally over the phone ask the ATO to process those January declarations. You just need to give a good reason why you couldn't get it done by the 14th. So that's it from me today, Lisa.
That's amazing, Ian. I mean, we use Xero all the time, and I didn't even realize that tab. So thank you very much for sharing that. Certainly something we could share to all our clients, particularly as we come across them and they do let us know what their challenges are. Top of the list is always cash flow. And onto that, then I think, Sammy, you're going to be discussing business and consumer confidence reports today. We'd be really interested in finding out more. Over to you.
Yes, thank you, Lisa, and hello, everybody. Firstly, I might just very quickly cover off on interest rates and property. Basically, the rates remain steady over the last week. However, we are seeing some bank policies being returned to those pre-COVID periods, so making it a bit easier to borrow money. And in particular, obviously, that's going to encourage people being able to borrow to purchase, and will probably in some shape or form continue to fuel the property market as well. We had a very strong auction results over the last weekend, with the exception of Queensland at 69%. Every other state and territory had an auction results of well above 90%, which is an amazing set of numbers. Unbelievable. Now onto the markets, and yes, and so basically business and consumer sentiments have seen a very significant recovery from the pandemic falls. And in fact, both of those measures are now better than they were ahead of the pandemic. I thought I'll just share with you just a couple of slides that's going to give you some perspective to that. Essentially, what you're seeing here is the consumer sentiments in red, business confidence in black, and business conditions in yellow. And as you can see, during the GFC period, we had a big drop, increase, and there was a few aftershocks, in fact. So what we're seeing right now is almost the same, a large decrease, in fact, bigger than the GFC, increase, decrease, and now we're seeing levels rising quite high. Now, of course, this can continue on, or whereas we have what looks like a W here, we might end up with an M here going back downwards. So I guess we'll need to wait and see how that all plays out. But essentially, there's improving economic prospects at the moment. There's low interest rates. Some industries like hospitality and tourism are in the early stages of reopening. Strong rebound post-crisis for some of these companies have been important. Obviously, there's scope for high sentiment levels to be sustained, if not improved, if that continues. And obviously, that's going to be positive overall. Now, I've got a second chart for you that breaks out that consumer sentiment into its different components. And as you can see, whilst family finances in blue, it seems to have gone down, gone up, and sort of plateauing a bit. All the other ones seem to be pointing upwards. So again, another good set of information at this point in time. Now, of course, it's early days because these things can obviously change with different catalysts. But there's definitely positive development, at least in these two in areas that I've just mentioned. And I guess in some ways it tells us that there is potential for a recovery in consumer spending, people spending more money going forward. And it's obviously consistent with some of the stronger corporate profitability results that's come out. As it stands now, it's expected that GDP will rise by 3.5% this year. It won't make up for what's happened last year as yet. There's still a bit of a way to go, but at least it's a start. Now, it's not all rosy though. Basically, there is still pain to be had. And obviously, as Adam mentioned, and his fresh perspective of how much money is owed to the ATO is again a testimony to the fact that we are in a two-speed economy. Some industries are doing well, other industries not so well. And again, we have to keep that in mind. The share market here was subdued last week with -2% on the back of mixed results. US had a good week. This coming week is a big week of corporate reporting, so it will provide us for more commentary as to how we're faring at the moment, what happened in the last 6 months, and what the outlook will be going forward. And of course, as it stands right now, the market has opened up higher today, although US markets closed tonight due to the President's Day. So tomorrow is a potentially could be a directionless day. So the flavor of the month still remains the cryptocurrency, as you would have gathered with everything that's going around. As I've mentioned in the past, it's an asset class of its own, which is very risky. These types of investments can have any value or nothing. So you should only be investing in it if you're willing to lose all you invest, and of course have some understanding of what you're investing in, which is a real big key. That will cover off on what I'm going to talk about today, and over to you, Lisa.
Oh, thanks, Sammy. You cover such a wide range of topics for us, so thank you so much for all the work that you do there. So now, in terms of the HR update, as our viewers would have known, I've always been trying to cover very controversial topics in HR, and we HR professionals have never been busier than ever in this pandemic. So, a lot of what we do, the aspects of HR that have changed have ranged from everything from terminations right through to workplace health and safety. I've been talking about the controversial topic of vaccines being compulsory, but today I'd like to talk about one of the most pertinent aspects of HR that has been adversely and positively at the same time affected by COVID, and that's recruitment. So during this pandemic period, a lot of organizations paused their recruiting activities, as you can imagine, whilst they were figuring out the short-term and medium-term effects of the pandemic in their business, and of course of the existing employees. But where recruitment activities have continued and resumed, as it is now in 2021, there's a massive need to shift to more online interviewing. And that trend has been increasing in 2021. And obviously organizations are looking at fast tracking all of their recruitment processes to be more technology based. So what has the impact of COVID-19 been on recruitment? Firstly, it has changed the face of recruitment by opening a whole global talent pool in ways that we've never explored before, as organizations have been forced to have work from home practices. A lot of businesses have discovered aspects of their processes or their work that can effectively be done remotely. So in effect, there is a massive realization that we now are looking at potential ways of accessing talent. But the global talent pool being more accessible just simply means that there is more competition for job seekers, as the access is wider for a lot of employers. But you know what? Talent is talent. no matter what circumstances we are all under. So if you spot an employee that is a top tier candidate in your job market, it's always wise to snap them up before somebody else does. A recent report has found that having a pipeline of good candidates is always a good idea. So in terms of screening potential employees, the criteria have also changed. And this is a very important part of the recruitment process. One's ability to communicate and work in teams has been an absolute priority. The second priority has been their mindset in learning. How quick are they to pick up speed? And what is their mindset to learning and to change? That's also a second criteria. The third criteria, obviously, is the technical skills, because we aren't as flexible as teaching and training in person. One's technical skills are always top of mind. So the fourth is self-direction. Like, how self-directed are the potential employees we're looking to hire? So a lot of these criteria in recruitment should now be top of mind for employers. But the landscape hasn't changed for employees screening their employers. So they're in fact looking for the same criteria: an organization that can communicate effectively with their teams, that can provide online platforms for learning and ongoing training, and of course, an organization that can help them motivate themselves and support them in that motivation. So for both employers and employees, there is a lot to learn from COVID-19. One of the things that we need to look at is looking at technology and how to use that. So for training and induction plans, if you haven't already done blended online programs, blended learning programs, that is definitely something you need to be looking at. So in some aspects, video training is as important as video interviewing. And Zoom obviously has been a massive platform for employers and employees there. So whilst it is tempting to also rely on technology tools, we also need to look at upholding best practice recruitment. So transparency and communication on how you're recruiting at the moment is important, so that candidates become prepared and you're not setting them up to fail. And obviously pivoting our recruitment practices to something more digital is absolutely essential. So that's really it for me with regards to HR, but recruitment has definitely been on the uprise in Australia, and that's good news for all of us. Thank you, everybody, for your tips today. Do we have any questions from the panelists in terms of the updates from everybody? Any feedback from anybody at all? No? Adam, you were about to say something? No? All right. Well, that wraps up our episode.
No, nothing from me, but happy Valentine's to everybody.
Yes, share the love around. That wraps up our episode for Monday the 15th. Thank you very much, viewers, for tuning in. Again, we are on Facebook and we're also on LinkedIn. Reach out to us if you have any questions, and we will see you next week at Business Insights. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you.